A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Mr. Marcus Garvey. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Shade and Shit Talking Podcast. I'm your host TK, and as always, I thank you guys for tuning in. So this week, I got quite a few things to talk about, to cover, but I wanted to start this week off just like I started off last week, just like I will be starting off every episode for the remainder of February, and that is talking about Black history, our history, American history, and focusing on, the 4 R's that I talked about last week: reflection, rejoicing, recommitting, and re-educating. Now, I went through last week and talked about what each one of those R's mean to me, and what I think I can do to show examples of all 4 of those. So that's what we on right now. But last week I talked about Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history, the creator of Negro History Week, which was the precursor to Black History Month. And I thought it was fitting that, I start off with the guy who pretty much started it off. So for this week, I figured I would talk about 2-3 people who hold a significant place, in my opinion, in Black history, and I kind of picked them because they had some type of significance actually this week, or a date this week had some sort of direct relation to them. So the first one that I want to talk about for a few minutes is Rosa Parks. Now, Rosa Parks, and we know the story of Miss Rosa Louise Macaulay Parks. We know that she was an activist. We know that she served a pivotal role in the civil rights movement, which jump started the whole thing, basically. I mean, she's been called by the United States Congress the first lady of civil rights. She's also been called the mother of the freedom movement. But on February 4th, 1913, she was born in Tuskegee, Alabama. Hence me picking her, because her birth falls on this week. But we all know it got started after a bus driver by the name of James Blake told her to give up her seat and go sit in the back in the color section, and she refused. And that kicked it all off. And I feel like we are and will be forever indebted to her for taking that stand. But she wasn't the first one who did it. It was actually a 15-year-old who was the first, but I think she didn't fit the profile of what they were looking for to make the face of the movement. But that's another story we'll talk about. But it got me to thinking, if she was here today and she decided to hop on the bus, what would she see? Like, would she see any big differences from back then when she was told to get to the back of the bus? And I honestly don't think it's a whole lot of difference. Don't get me wrong, we've made strides and things have gotten better in some fronts, but it isn't a whole lot of difference. I mean, yes, we don't have Jim Crow, and yes, we don't have lawful segregation per se, but there's always ways around it, and they use them all. So, I think that she would still see a lot of problems, a lot of iniquity, a lot of the same racism that she saw back in 55. Now, there aren't any signs of whites onlys, and there ain't any signs saying black people got to sit on the back of the bus, or black people got to use the back entrance, and all this and that. But there still is a systemic racism. There's still systems and barriers that are put into place that really serve as, de facto segregation. Whether they're doing it by race, by income, doesn't matter. It's the same damn thing. And she will see it. I mean, hell, we see it. We see it every day. We live it. We live it every day. Even though, people would like to say that we're imagining these things, or racism isn't real, or segregation still doesn't take place. But those are the same people who deny the obvious, the redlining, the housing discrimination, the job discrimination, all of that shit. But like I said, if she just got on the bus and rode around, she'll still see all the same shit that she saw back in 55. It's just done in a different method. Same results, different method. So, but before I move to my next subject, I do want to give a small nod to the MBTA, the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority. They now have a way to permanently commemorate Rosa Parks' bravery and sacrifice. So they signed a law last month that stated that a decal or a LED sign will be on every single bus. So, in a way, she symbolically rides every MBTA bus. So shout out to them, even though Boston has a horrible history of racism, horrible present as well from the things I've been told and seen and read. But that's a good look on them. So shout out to them. So my next subject that I wanted to talk about was Medgar Evers. Now, the reason why I brought him up for this week's episode was because, well, let me tell you the story of Medgar Evers first, for those of you who may not know. But Medgar Evers, he was a civil rights activist in the state of Mississippi. He was a field secretary for the NAACP. And he worked very hard and very tirelessly to overturn segregation at Ole Miss, University of Mississippi. He worked to end segregation of public facilities. He worked to expand the amount of opportunities that black folks got, with one of the biggest he saw was the right to vote, the enforcement of the voting rights. Now, he's not from Mississippi. He was born. He's from Mississippi. He was born in Decatur, Mississippi, and he did a lot of work in the city of Jackson. He attended Alcorn State. He was in the military as well, serving in World War II. This man was by every measure a stand-up citizen, a stand-up man, a stand-up American. And he was murdered, assassinated in his own driveway, not because he was messing with anybody, not because he had wronged anybody, but because he had the nerve to stand up for black people and their rights. That's all he did. He wasn't violent. He didn't attack anybody. He just tried to galvanize the people to do right in a non-violent way, and he was assassinated. Now, this happened in 1963. He was killed by a racist Klansman by the name of Byron De La Beckwith. Now, for those of you who may remember, you probably seen the movie Ghost of Mississippi. It was all about this. But De La Beckwith was a member of the White Citizens Council. And their sole being, their sole purpose was to resist integration of schools, to resist civil rights activism, to basically be a nuisance and a thorn in the sides of black people. They terrorized the shit out of black people. All because of their own, I don't know, savagery, their evilness, their feeling that white is right, and their need to protect their white supremacy. Basically, all pieces of shit, and I hope they burn in hell, but that's neither here nor there. So, anyways, like I said, he was assassinated. Evans was assassinated in 1963. And this is after he was living his life under the constant threats of death. A constant fear of being killed, but he didn't care. I mean, he was regularly followed. He was regularly followed home by FBI, police, all of that. And what's crazy about it is he was always he had the FBI shadowing him for protection, quote unquote protection, but for reasons unknown, on the day he was murdered, they weren't there. And it's been widely speculated that a lot of members of the police force at that time was members of the Klan, which I 100% believe is true. I wouldn't doubt it at all. But anyways, he pulled into his driveway after returning from a meeting with NAACP lawyers, and he was gunned down right there in his driveway. So they had trials, two trials, and the first one was in February 1964. It was deadlocked, no surprise. All white jury, no surprise. The second one was April of 1964, deadlocked, all white jury once again. I mean, we understand why. At the time, black folks were still disenfranchised by Mississippi's Constitution, all of that. So it was no surprise. But on February 5th, 1994, after 30 years of living as a free man, this dude was given life. He's 73 years old, given life for killing Medgar Evers. Now, he eventually died, I believe in 2001, which I think is some bullshit. I wish he could have served the whole time, but I mean, we understand what it is and what it was, and quite honestly, the justice system of today still has a lot of the same elements as the justice system back then, and we see it over and over. It's not designed for us now. It wasn't designed for us then, and until they throw the whole goddamn system away, it'll never be for us. Period. But again, I'm doing this with the hopes that for those of you who don't know our history, you learn something from it, and what you do learn from it, you commit yourselves to reaching out to others who may not know and teaching them, especially the little ones. Teaching them who they are, what they are, where they came from, and what they are facing. Because it's all the same, you know, from back then to now. Different method, same results. Earlier this week, February 5th, we had the State of the Union address given to us by Toupe Fiasco, Orange, Blunder, IQ 45, whatever you want to call him. And I honestly didn't watch the whole thing. I really couldn't stomach it all. You've seen him tell one lie, you heard them all. So it was really a waste of time to me, in my opinion, to sit there and watch it all. But this State of the Union had its moments. The biggest and most talked about two moments would be Nancy Pelosi and the condescending clap that's been memed and shit already. And then you had Stacey Abrams be the first black woman to make the Democratic rebuttal. And by the way, I like this lady. She seems like she's really for the people. Plus, she's from Mississippi, just like me, my hometown, matter of fact. So she get that love and support anyways. But back to the used car salesman. So in his address, he sought to strike a bipartisan tone of unity and progress. Doing this just weeks after the longest shutdown in U.S. history, and with less than 2 weeks to go before the next funding lapse. So in this address, he asked Americans to quote unquote choose greatness, and he focused on talking about his top priorities, which is immigration, of course, the fucking wall, the economy, infrastructure, drug prices, and national security. So what I thought I'd do is just go through some of his talking points real quick and tell you whether it's true, false, or incomplete. Need more information. One claim, he said that year after year, countless Americans are murdered by criminal illegal aliens. Now, he has repeatedly cited crimes committed by undocumented immigrants, both during his campaign and during his tenure. Well, what the stats do show is that it found that immigrants, legal or illegally, are less likely than native-born Americans to be convicted of a crime. And throughout the country, there is also generally a decrease in the number of violent crimes, and this is according to the FBI. Other studies have found that murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault have not increased alongside an uptick in undocumented immigration since 1990. And it also found that undocumented immigrants do not contribute to an increase in drug overdoses and DUI deaths, and that young undocumented immigrants engage in less crime than their American or legal immigrant peers. Now he also said that the border city of El Paso used to have extremely high rates of violent crime, one of the highest in the country, and is considered one of our nation's most dangerous cities. Now, with the powerful barrier in place, El Paso is now one of our safest cities. Well, now that last part was true. El Paso is considered one of the safest cities, but it's not directly caused by the wall, the fence, or whatever you want to call it. You know, what he said is ambiguous and makes an inaccurate connection, if you ask me. But according to an analysis of FBI crimes data and city law enforcement data that was analyzed by the El Paso Times, this is where I got this from, by the way. Violent crime in El Paso peaked in 1993. Border fence construction didn't begin until 2008 and was completed in 2009. But violent crime fell long before the wall was built in El Paso, with violent crime falling 34% between 93 and 2006 in the city. And according to the El Paso Times, from 2006 to 2011, violent crime in El Paso actually increased by 17%. So, there you have it. Now, of course, he made a claim about the economy. He said, in just over 2 years since the election, we have launched an unprecedented economic boom, a boom that has rarely been seen before. Now, he can claim some credit for the acceleration of the economy on his watch. I give him that, but not most of it. Because the fact is, he inherited a labor market in the later stages of a long recovery from the Great Recession that had fairly consistent job creation. The growth in monthly payrolls that was reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics averaged 217,000 jobs under President Barack Obama's second term, and under Trump it has averaged 203,000, pushing the overall unemployment rate to the lowest level since 1969, and unprecedented levels for people of color. Now, he claimed that the economy added 5.3 million jobs, but the truth is it only added 4.87 million jobs since he took office. Again, it's some truth in what he said, mixed with lies as well. One thing he did say that was completely true was that he said, and I quote, "It's unacceptable that Americans pay vastly more than people in other countries for the exact same drugs, often made in the exact same place. This is wrong, this is unfair, and together we will stop it." Now that is 100% true. It's true that we Americans spend more money for medication than Canada, Europe, and other places. Now he used this as a talking point to show yet another example, in his opinion, of how the world takes advantage of the U.S. Now, they put out a report in October that stated pharmaceutical manufacturers charge almost 2 times more in the U.S. for drugs that fall under Medicare Part B. So, that is true. I'm shocked, but it's 100% true. Now, he also talked about national security. He talked about ISIS. He talked about a lot of shit. He talked about North Korea. He said some questionable things with that. But you can go back and listen to it. You can find it pretty much anywhere. CNN, hell, Fox, whatever you want. Wherever you want to go find it, you can find it and research it for yourself. But those are some of the things that I saw. And again, you heard one lie, you heard them all. I just wasn't interested enough to listen to it for that long amount of time. In the midst of the State of the Union and the other shit going on with the president and his shenanigans and Roger Stone, we had a few stories to break that shows us that the state of Virginia right now is in goddamn shambles. Now, I find it extremely problematic, extremely disturbing, honestly, that 3 of the top government positions in the state of Virginia is very problematic right now. You got 3 people, I believe, involved with some type of blackface incident. Then you got the lieutenant governor involved in sexual assault shit going on. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. But it all started with the Democratic governor, Ralph Northam. He had been under pressure to resign after photos from a 1984 medical school yearbook surfaced that showed people in blackface and people in KKK robes. And it was, one of them was him. He didn't say which one. But then he came back and backtracked and said it wasn't him. But he did cop out to another incident where he used black shoe polish to dress up as Michael Jackson, which is crazy to me. I ain't even touch that. So they called for him to step down. And I talked about this guy briefly last week. We have a black lieutenant governor in Virginia. So if Northam was to step down, the lieutenant governor would be next in line. Well, hold that thought. The lieutenant governor, Justin Fairfax, was accused by a college professor of sexually assaulting her in 2004. Now, this is an accusation that the Washington Post appeared to find credible, if uncorroborated, when she contacted them about it back in 2017. Fairfax, in his own defense, says the encounter was consensual. Well, this past Friday, a second accuser went public and said that the lieutenant governor had raped her in college. Crazy. Okay, so you got the governor in some shit. You got his successor, possible successor, in some shit. So that, if both of those are out the way, then the attorney general falls next in line in the succession after Fairfax. Well, he also found himself in some shit with blackface, no less. And I mean, that just totally goddamn exploded the whole political crisis in Virginia. Now, he confessed to putting on blackface in the 80s as well. He issued a statement saying he wore brown makeup and a wig in 1980 to look like a rapper during a party as a 19-year-old student at the University of Virginia. And what's crazy is he had been one of the ones calling for Northam to resign. He said, and I quote, he was deeply, deeply sorry for the pain that I caused with this revelation. He also said that in the days ahead, honest conversations and discussions will make it clear whether I can or should continue to serve as Attorney General. I don't know what the hell gonna happen to Virginia, man. But y'all got some goddamn problems. But this is Virginia, and its history is well known for racism and racist bullshit, so I don't know. Hey, y'all gonna have to work that shit out and work it out fast.
Since the founding of our nation, many of our greatest strides from gaining our independence to abolition of civil rights to extending the vote for women have been led by people of faith and started in prayer.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You can't be serious. Now, Toupee Fiasco said this during the National Prayer Breakfast. Listen, I say all the time about how this man lies, but I honestly believe he is telling the truth. This was a Freudian slip like a motherfucker. And I think he's telling the truth. Dog whistle at its finest. Y'all heard it for y'allself. Better pay attention, cause that shit is real. That wasn't a slip, a mistake as they trying to make it. No. He meant that shit. He just wasn't supposed to tell it. Dummy. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gather around for this week's episode of Colonizer Nonsense. My first Colonizer Nonsense moment takes me to the state of Florida. Yet a damn again. Listen, Florida, we so tired of y'all, man. Seriously. Headline: Video of BSO deputy calling a black father boy amid foul language sparks complaints. The actions of a Broward Sheriff's Office deputy who has a history of making false arrests drew a complaint from the Broward Public Defender's Office after a body cam from a July 2017 incident emerged last month. So, in this video, you have a deputy by the name of James Cady. He confronts a brother by the name of Alan Floyd. Now, this man was sitting on the curb, holding his baby, minding his business, when Cady confronted him, dropping F-bomb after F-bomb, calling this grown-ass man boy, before he appeared to grab him by the throat. Now, during this incident, Floyd wasn't under any type of investigation, nor was he being belligerent towards Cady or any other officers there. So, the Broward Public Defender by the name of Howard Finkelstein, he made it a point to show this to the newly appointed Broward Sheriff Gregory Toney, a brother. Interesting. Finkelstein had this to say: Deputy Cady's verbal assault, coupled with him choking an otherwise cooperative bystander, can only be characterized as unlawful touching. In addition, Deputy Cady's use of the term boy is offensive, condescending, and demeaning. It carries racial connotations when used addressing an adult black male. Now, my problem with this all is this guy Cady shouldn't even been on the force. Like, he has numerous, when I say numerous, I'm talking 4 or 5 incidents on his record that shows he shouldn't be a cop. He has costed that county over $650,000 in paid out lawsuit money, but yet he still has a job. This is exactly why people protest, exactly why people kneel, exactly why they need to throw the whole damn system away. This nigga, he needs to be fired, period. My next Colonizer Nonsense moment takes me to the world of fashion, where honestly, I'm not the least bit surprised by what happened. Headline: Gucci apologizes after social media users say sweater resembles blackface. Now listen, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it was an ad with a brown-haired white girl with this pitch black baklava wool jumpsuit on. And it has a turtleneck where it's pulled over to the face with a mouth hole cut out. Well, this mouth hole was trimmed in red to look like lips. Now, if you see this on a person, the first thing that comes to mind is Sambo blackface. I mean, it fits to a T. So, they decided to put this sweat out, and people called them out on their bullshit, and they apologized. Now, in this apology, they said that Gucci deeply apologizes for the offense caused by the wool baklava sweat jumper. We can confirm that the item has been immediately removed from our online store and all physical stores. We consider diversity to be a fundamental value to be fully upheld, respected, and at the forefront of every decision we make. Come on now. There is no way you can tell me that the decision makers are diverse, because I know damn well ain't no self-respecting black woman or black man gonna make this shit, for one, and for two, they ain't gonna approve you putting out this bullshit. Stop it, Gucci. So you have hip-hop stars like T.I., Soulja Boy, and so forth. All of them are boycotting Gucci after they spend hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars on their product. T.I. had a lengthy Instagram post where he talked about they got us fucked up, and that may be true, but I ain't bought none of this shit anyway. Hell, it didn't take no racist sweater to make me say fuck them. I just looked at the goddamn prices, and that was enough for me. I do wonder though if Guwap gonna drop the Gucci himself. We'll see. My final Colonizer Nonsense moment takes me to an unknown restaurant in an unknown town where the shit got real quick.
Call the cop! Yeah! You fucking nigger! You fucking You a fucking low-life little bitch! Get out, bitch! Get out! You a little low-life. Sir, I'll call police on you.
Now, in this particular video, which I saw on Black with No Chaser, like, follow, and share, by the way, also catches on Instagram and Twitter, Black No Chaser. This old white guy decided to say what he wanted to say, and this young lady smacked the shit out of him upside his head. And after that, he pulled the play card that they always pull. He went from aggressor to victim in 1.2 seconds, claiming he didn't do anything wrong. But I mean, racially harassing and trying to intimidate a young lady ain't wrong, I guess. Well, all I have is this to say. She was right in smacking the shit out of him. I'd have probably beat the hell out of him myself for the blatant disrespect. But y'all gonna learn that word is gonna get you fucked up. Them Hands University is real, and they giving out scholarships left and right. Black, white, old, young, it don't matter. Keep talking that shit, you gonna get a very well-rounded education. Seriously. This week in sports starts us off with the most highly watched, highly anticipated, biggest spectacle in all the sports, the Super Bowl, down in Atlanta. Now this past weekend, we had Super Bowl 53 featuring the LA Rams versus the New England Patriots. And for those of you who love a game of defense, big plays, big hits, big stops, this was the game for you. But for those of you who are like me, that look for vertical games, big scores, a lot of passing, a lot of yards, this just wasn't it. That shit was terrible. Boring. Now the Rams, which has been known to be called the greatest show on turf, came out looking like the worst offense on earth when it faced against a subpar at times, mediocre at times, middle of the road defense coached by Bill Belichick, defensive coordinator Brian Flores, assisted with multiple bogus calls from the refs and the line judges, en route to a 13-3 win. 3 fucking points. Come on, LA. Well, speaking of bad calls, the city of New Orleans and their fans decided to ban and block the Super Bowl by throwing themselves a huge parade and block party to celebrate their loss. Yikes. Let that hurt go, man. They took to the streets to step in the name of L's and second line in protest of the call that never was. Now, on a side note, I couldn't help but see that the irony in this and that a lot of those people protesting had a problem when black folks took to the streets to protest social injustice, police brutality, and the failed justice system with juries making bad calls. But since it affects you directly, protesting ain't a problem. You know what? Never mind me. moving on. Now, the Patriots offense wasn't that dynamic. You had a mediocre performance by Tom Brady. Sony Michel had 80 yards and a touchdown, but this team was led by slot receiver Cheetah and PED user Julian Edelman, whose 10-catch, 143-yard performance garnered him Super Bowl MVP, as well as the insanely laughable and ignorant notion of him being a Hall of Famer. Can you say privileged, boys and girls? Before I move on, let me just say this about the Patriots. Now, you know how I feel about them. I hate them. I've said it numerous times to numerous people, but as a man, I have to give credit where credit is due. So, the New England Patriots are a good team. They are a dynasty. And as much as it pains for me to say this about Tom Brady, I have to say it. Tom Brady is the GOAT. The GOAT of cheating, you rotten motherfucker. You will never be, nor have you ever been, ahead of Joe Cool in my eyes. Joe Montana's the GOAT. Deal with it. In other NFL news, Antonio Brown has found himself making headlines once again. Now, we have covered his whole thing extensively on this show, from his riff with the team, his fight with Ben Roethlisberger, his suspension for the last game, his beef with Ryan Clark calling him an Uncle Tom. Well, a few days ago, a story came out that back in January, Antonio Brown had a domestic altercation with the mother of his child, but he was not arrested and no charges was pressed. But the story goes that she wouldn't leave his property. She wouldn't get out of the doorway, and he allegedly pushed her. Now, I don't know how true it is, but I will say, I hope everything that he got going on, he cleared up and pulls his shit together. The man is an immense talent, and I would hate to see him throw it away over some dumb shit. But if he did indeed push that woman and hit that woman and he's charged or whatever, then he deserves to be punished by the full extent of the law, and that's just what it is. Over in the NBA, all the talk about an Anthony Davis trade was for naught and just smoke and mirrors. Now, last week I told y'all the Lakers offered 5 players, 2 first-round picks, the cure for AIDS, and just Wednesday, LeBron threw in his oldest son for good measure, all for nothing. Now, here's what I think. This was all a ruse from the beginning by New Orleans as revenge on LA for the NFC Championship game. That front office finessed Magic the whole time while playing James Brown's The Big Payback on repeat all day in the office, laughing their ass off. Now, once again, Magic showed his hand and got fucked. But honestly, it wouldn't be the first time he didn't cover himself and get burned from a fucking... Relax. I'm talking about Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Let's just see if LeBron and these young players Magic couldn't trade will be the cure for what's ailing him now. Relax. I'm talking about losses. And finally, big shout out to Mr. Tony Dungy. On February 4th, 2007, Tony Dungy became the first black head coach to win the Super Bowl. That wasn't the only history he made. In 2008, he also became the only coach in NFL history to have 10 straight playoff appearances. He also became the first black head coach in the modern era to be named to the Hall of Fame as such. We also would like to send our condolences, our love, and respect to the family of Frank Robinson. Mr. Robinson was a 14-time All-Star, as well as the first black man to be a manager in Major League Baseball, and he was the only player to win MVP in both leagues. Well, he passed away on Thursday at the age of 83. So our love, support, condolences goes out to his family. These Black History moments, as well as this entire episode, was brought to you by Black with No History Chaser, where this month we are attempting to teach and educate our people about the history of our people because they didn't teach us shit in school or they whitewashed what they did teach us. I will see you guys next week. Reached the end of another episode of the Shade and Shit Talking podcast, and as always, I really thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate the likes, the shares, the follows, the downloads, all of it. I really appreciate it. I look forward to talking to you guys each and every week. Now, I ask that you guys check us out on Black with No Chaser on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, Black No Chaser. We are dropping a bunch of original content right now for Black History Month. We are dropping, daily little known Black history facts and videos and snippets and whatnot to increase the likelihood of our people learning about our people. We also have a new original cartoon series that we debuted a few days ago by comedian and producer Dexter Ferguson. Shout out to D-Ferg. And it's called Virginity Stories. It's actually pretty damn fun. I probably watched it 1,000 times, man. I encourage you to check that out for a good hearty laugh. Also, speaking of Black history, check out my boy Jarius Thomas over at the Unapologetic Geek for blurs and those who love comic books and things like me. He's dropping a series daily where he does a black superhero or supervillain, and he gives a little history on them. Just another little twist on Black history, teaching about who we are and what we are. As always, I thank you guys. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And, we just gonna keep doing this thing, keep rocking out, keep putting our best foot forward, our best efforts to grow and expand and become a force in this game, giving a Black voice in a space that's void of real, true Black voices. So, I'm gonna leave you guys with this. The best way to fight an alien and oppressive culture is to embrace your own. I'll see you guys next week.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.